In this module of Grammar Refresher for Educators, let's look at how to use apostrophes for possession. I have to say that I'm very passionate about apostrophes, and there are a few things that really grind my gears when it comes to language and punctuation grammar rules. And that's when people will use apostrophes to make words plural. I love this cartoon that I saw online, and this is completely me. I could label this woman laying there in pain. That would be Jill. So I put a little note here. Apostrophes do not make words plural. And I want to show you an example that I saw on Facebook the other day from a school principal who shall remain anonymous. And it was about a team and their recent game. And I've changed the name of the school here to John Doe Middle School. And the text in the Facebook post said John Doe Middle School boys apostrophe s showed a lot of talent, determination, etc., etc. Here, the principal does not mean a boy owns something. This boy cannot own showed. What this principle meant was simply the plural form of boys. So John Doe Middle School boys showed a lot of talent and determination. This is a simple example of a plural noun. And we've learned since elementary school how to make singular nouns plural. We add s, es, or ies. Those are the three basic ways. So here, this is an example, and I'm not sure why other people do this all the time. Even adults who maybe even have a PhD will make a word plural with an apostrophe. Apostrophes never make a word plural. You remember, you make words plural by adding s, es, and ies. Now, when we're getting close here to the holiday season, we're going to see a lot of examples of last names and how you make last names plural. Let's say that for Christmas, I'm going to buy my Christmas cards, and when I sign them, I'll sign Love the Vogels. So here's my last name. Let's say I've signed my card, and I would sign it just Vogels, no apostrophes. Now, if I have, let's say we're talking about the Vogels card, here's my last name, and we're talking about Chris and Jill Vogel, we would have Vogels with an apostrophe after it because it's plural, the Vogels car. But if I'm signing that Christmas card, remember, and I'm making the last name Vogel plural, I would sign it the Vogels. Here's another example, the last name Meyer. To make the last name Meyer plural, add an S. Kennedy. Now this is a tricky one. Nouns that end in Y, you would usually drop the Y and add IES. But when you're talking about a last name, you simply add an S after the Y. And that notes the last name Kennedy, plural. The next is when we have a last name that ends in S, such as Mullins or Jones. In order to make sure that what I've known for many years still stands, I looked up these rules on many sites and in many grammar textbooks that I have access to. And I've actually linked to one of my prime sources here is a grammar guru online. She has excellent podcasts if you're interested in that. And according to all my sources, when you make a last name that ends in S, plural, you add ES. So both of these last names would be Mullins's and Jones's. Now, if this is awkward, let's say we're writing that Christmas card and we're going to sign it, Love the Mullinses. You can write it this way, with the ES at the end. Or to avoid that confusion, you may just say from the Mullins family. And this is not a possessive use of the word Mullins, so we're not going to use an apostrophe there. Now, Joneses, if you say keeping up with the Joneses, you would add the ES there to it. Now, let's take a look at singular nouns. I have the rule here posted with a little star because we love apostrophe rules. And each rule here is noted with a star. So heart for the rules, stars for the breakdown of the rules. Okay, so some of this may seem kind of elementary. Just bear with me because we want to start with the foundation so we can build up to more complex uses of apostrophes. Okay, so when we're looking at singular nouns, we only add an apostrophe and an S to make the word possessive. We are not making the contraction with the word is. We're not talking about contractions. We're talking about possession. So if I say the toy of the child, I want to flip that around and make that shorter and use a possessive form of child. So to do that, I would write that as child's toy. And it auto capitalized here, so I'm going to turn that off. Next, what if we had the phrase ray of the sun? To turn this phrase around and make it possessive, I would add an apostrophe S, the sun's ray. Now here's a name. How do we have one Jill and let's say the water bottle. Jill, that's a strange phrase, sorry. So to make that possessive, add apostrophe S and add water bottle. Jill's water bottle. Now here is an example, a word that I see messed up quite a bit, even by well-meaning adults. Let's say that we're talking about a week's worth of grocery money. So we said a, which means one, a week's worth, because it is here in a way worth belongs to the week. A week's worth, I'll just shorten that to money. So we have 1 week, and this is where the meaning and the use of it in context matters. A week is 1, so apostrophe S, a week's worth of money. Now let's look at singular nouns that end in S. And I have an example here for nouns ending in S or a Z sound. You add only an apostrophe and no S if that word matches these two rules. The noun has more than one syllable, and adding an extra S would make that word too hard to say. So let's take, for example, let me give you a common noun, the word bus. And let's say the bus's right headlight is out. Well, this is a singular noun that ends in S. But to make it plural, you don't just add an apostrophe. If you look back at our rule, to add only an apostrophe and no S, the noun has to have more than one syllable. Bus is one syllable, so to make that possessive, you actually add the apostrophe and the S. Plus, it's not hard to say. If I say the bus's headlight. And this is where some folks would just add the apostrophe, thinking every time a word ends in S, all I do is put an apostrophe on it, and that's not true. All right, let's look at a name. Names get a little bit tricky. So I have a noun, a name that ends in S, Chris. One syllable. So if I look back at my rule, do I add an apostrophe S or do I add an apostrophe only? First check, the noun has more than one syllable. Well, it doesn't. So since it's one syllable and adding the extra S is not going to make it hard to say, then I add the apostrophe S. So something that could belong to Chris is Chris's wallet. And it's not difficult to pronounce Chris's. Okay, here's another example. Wes, one syllable. It's a name that ends in S. And now we're going to have three S's in a row. And even though it may look strange, it's actually grammatically correct. Wes's shoe. Now let's look at the name Augustus. Augustus has more than one syllable. And if we add an extra S, it would make the word a little harder to pronounce. Augustus is, you get a little tongue-tied. So here's an example of when you would only use the apostrophe. So we mean one Augustus. Augustus toe. That's a random word to say, isn't it, toe? So that would be the proper use of only an apostrophe at the end of a singular noun. Now, an exception here is for classical references. So if we're talking about like Greek and Roman gods, we only add an apostrophe after these names. Even though you could probably technically say Zeus's, the rule in many grammar books is with classical references, you only add an apostrophe to make these words possessive. So we have Hercules' story and Zeus's wife. Now let's take a look at plural nouns. We know that plural nouns are nouns that have S, IS, or ES, or some plural nouns are words without S, such as deer. And it gets real confusing if you're talking about one deer or many deer. It's the same spelling. Here's an example. I have the word player, and it is plural by adding an S. So if I wanted to talk about the player's locker room, well, the locker room here belongs to the players. So if I look at my rule, to form the possessive case of a plural noun that ends in S, you add only the apostrophe. And that apostrophe is now a symbol after the S to note we're talking about more than one player. In context, if you misplaced the apostrophe and wrote it as player's locker room, then what you're talking about is the locker room only belongs to one player. Must be some kind of high-paid NFL player then to have his own locker room. So here is the example of a plural noun. All you add is an apostrophe to plural nouns. Now let's look at deer. Words like deer or children or men. Those are all plural words that do not end in S. So to make those plural words possessive, you have to add an apostrophe and an S. And that makes those three words possessive. Now, as I said before, deer is the kind of word that, in the context of how you use it, determines where the apostrophe goes. So if I said a deer antler was in the road. Here's my sentence. A deer's antler was in the road. I've said a, which means one. So to make a singular word plural, to make a singular word possessive, add an apostrophe S. And I know that this was just one deer's antler in the road. Now, in context, let's say I wrote my sentence, we found many deer's antlers. the road. When I make the word dear plural possessive, I still only add an apostrophe s, because the word dear is plural in its meaning without adding an s, just like children or men's. It is the context of how I use it in the sentence that helps the reader know if I mean more than one or just one. So here I have, we found many deer's antlers. So I've not only added plural to antler, but I've added the word many to help make my meaning clear. Let's do a little practice with both singular and plural possessive words. I have a chart here that I first would like to work out the singular possessive, the plural form of the word, and the plural possessive. I want to check that I know the rules and can write each one of those words with these categories. So here's my list of singular nouns. Now I'm going to write that word as a singular possessive word, which would be the word class with an apostrophe S. It's only one syllable, and it's not hard to say with the extra S, so classes. Next, how do I make the word class just a normal old plural noun? Let's say my sentence is, I teach 5 classes of English. Add an ES, classes. Next, plural possessive. All I have to do is take my plural form of that word, which is classes, and our rule is when a plural noun ends in S, all you add is the apostrophe. Let's do one more together before you try this by yourself. So I have the singular noun mother. To make that singular noun possessive, I would write the word mother and an apostrophe S. So if I said my mother's birthday is on September 1st, I would write mothers with the apostrophe S. Next, plural nouns. How do you make the word mother plural? Let's first write the word mother and add an S. So if I said 5 mothers on the basketball boosters team or something, then I'm talking about 5 women who are mothers, 5 mothers. Okay, plural possessive. To make the word mothers, the plural word mothers possessive, the rule says you add an apostrophe after the S. I have given you a copy of this chart in a Word document. So right now, if you would pause the video and complete the chart, then when you're ready to check your answers, you can unpause the video and see if you got the blank spaces correct. Now that you've tried by yourself, you can compare your answers to the answers here on the screen. Let's try working through one of these words and put each word in a sentence, just so we know that not only can we write these words in their possessive and plural forms, but we can use those words in context correctly. Let's use snowman, just because I can't wait for it to snow. So first I'm going to use snowman, singular noun. My son built a snowman. Next word, I have the singular version of snowman, and I've made it possessive with an apostrophe S. So I have one snowman, it's possessive. The snowman's nose was a carrot. The word or the nose belongs to the snowman, so I have to use an apostrophe S to show possession. Okay, next we have the plural form of snowman, which is snowmen. So I'll say my daughter built 5 snowmen. So this is just a simple use of the plural word snowmen. Next we have the plural possessive of snowmen. And this is where my students used to always just get in the habit of thinking, okay, when a word is plural, you add the apostrophe after the S, and that's how they would write it, snowmen's. But you have to remember, the word plural itself is snowmen. So to make a plural word possessive, you add the apostrophe S. So I could say, the snowmen's arms were sticks. And in context, I know that I'm talking about more than one snowman because I have snowmen's arms were sticks. With one little change of a letter, if I change that E to an A, my whole meaning of the sentence has changed. What I really mean is many snowmen's arms were made of sticks. Thank you for watching this tutorial on possessive apostrophes.